and welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer, and we're discussing the Righteous Gemstones Season 2, Episode number 5, Interlude Part 2. If you've not hit the sub button, please do so. Leave a like, leave a comment. A lot of great comments from last week. Appreciate the Richard Cheney and everyone who was letting us know about the potential when we were discussing the sets and the different churches and the stadium and everything. A lot of good stuff in the comment section. Appreciate that, guys. And let's start with, where do I want to start? I want to give a shout out to the two kids that played Jesse and Judy. Or, well, they weren't kids; they were younger. They were so damn good. Everything from the mannerisms. If you notice, like when they were on the stage, the actress that played the young Judy, the way she would dance was exactly how Judy dances, and just everything about it. Like you can tell these two really studied the characters they were portraying. But yeah, fucking hilarious.
They did do a surprisingly good job. Yeah, it was pretty funny. You know, like I remember, I think it was like the first season when they did that flashback episode. I didn't know whether it would feel the same as the rest of the show, but it's on par, and sometimes a little better than some of the modern stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that little Jesse is just one of Danny McBride's kids. Like it's.
Yeah, dude, he was killing it. I mean, there were so many lines that was just dying, and all the interactions with Baby Billy were just, Goggins was just on point, and the them doing the little sleepover and just all the different dialogue, and the scene in which he I'm jumping all over, but Christmas morning, the kids getting all those gifts and their excitement, and when he didn't think he was getting a gift, the way he played that, like it was just so well. I'm curious how many takes that took for him to just sort of, you could see the emotion in his face of being irritated and then pissed, and then them be like, no, we did get you something, and then finally excited and happy.
And it's funny too, because the present that he gave was the shittiest. He just re-gifted some bullshit scam that he got pulled into, and then was mad that he wasn't going to get an actual present, to finally excited that it was the most perfectly acted asshole. That he is that one relative that everyone has one of, that is the biggest piece of shit, yet you could relate to it in like 2 seconds. It was the greatest scene. Everybody's been at one of those Christmases, and I'm not talking about like that level of millions of dollar gifts. I'm talking about that level of shittiness where that one person feels entitled to those kind of feelings when they give you the shittiest present, and then when you give them something good in return, they're like, they feel entitled to that present. And I'm like, oh my God, everybody has had one of those, and it was so good.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you said, it's relatable, I think, is the key word, because like you said, we've all got that friend or that family member in the shift. It was so funny. Just the like, that's okay, like, it's all right. And he's like, yeah, no, I said it's all right. Yeah, I just got a gift for all 5 of y'all, and y'all didn't get me nothing. It's all right.
And then when they gave him the gift, he's like, whoa, I was gonna be so pissed. The bulk of the episode takes place in 1993 Christmas, and it mainly focuses on Eli, and Eli having some money problems. He wants to expand the church. He wants to build that big stadium that is in the series, and this is sort of that transitional period where he's trying to figure out how can he take the next step and increase the amount of money they're pulling in. And a blast from the past, Junior's father, who I never wrote down the name, I should have, but Junior's father, who was the wrestling promoter and clearly mob boss, comes in and basically wants to launder his money through the church. Clever, very clever. I was like, that's pretty smart. And we're basically getting that storyline, and we get the big revelation that Eli initially wants to make the deal. He turns against him, and then it all results in a accidental murder, where his father kills Junior's father, and then the hiding of the body in the amusement park. So a lot of answers in terms of why he's on that roller coaster, the what happened to Junior's father, the bond that Eli has with his what was the position, the his accountant, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All that stuff, brought to the front and explained in this episode.
Glen-
And what'd you say his name was?
Glendon.
Linden?
Okay.
Glendon Marsh. That's Junior's dad.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Like but yeah, that does, we're doing a lot of jumping from the present to the past, that and it's it's focusing on two sets of characters. I still feel like, the bits of Junior's past that we're getting, that it's a red herring, that we are going to get, you know, Junior maybe going at things roughly the way his father did, but the thing that his father said he wanted to do, that Junior's going to do, is founding a church. He's going to get in on that business. I think the real question is, since we're jumping back to Baby Billy's past as well quite a bit and talking about his son, is what's the long game for Baby Billy in all this? That's what I'm really curious about, because it seems like there's clearly a scheme,
And
and a lot of
and he's such a major part of this episode as well. That's
he,
true.
he really is, and it just feels like, and it may be simpler than I'm thinking, but it feels like it's being set up to be something very complex that he's been planning for a while, because we've had a lot of him in the right place at the right time this season, and he seems like he still hasn't given up on that grudge that he has with Eli.
Well, and
I'm sorry, I was he said the right place. Was he a mojito? What was he sipping on? Sitting
Yeah,
behind the
a mojito,
yeah.
but and we've talked about it in other shows, how they don't approach the flashbacks well, or they don't, the pacing of the shows feel off a little bit. But this show, and we talked about approaching a comedy show in a different way, because this is a mystery. You're trying to unravel these different murder plots, and like Larry just said, red herrings, and all these different plot lines that are so, you know, intertwined so well that we approach this show, and not in the comedy fashion, but the first 5 minutes we just talked about, it's all comedy. It's so well done. It's funny, relatable, but this show, for it to throw in a flashback episode, the entire episode is a flashback, but it pulls so much light into the plot and so much into the characters and the development, and why Eli, and his accountant are so close, and why Junior knows what happened to his dad but doesn't really bring it up, and it it's so much revelation in the plot, but it is so enlightening and well done and paced well and placed in a perfect part of the season. The flashback episode is so perfectly placed in this season, where in other shows that we've talked about, it's not. uh, it, this entire, I don't know, dramedy is, I hate that word so much, but it's
It
That's
fits,
what it
right?
is. Yeah.
it fits. I can't praise this show enough. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and like you said, Eli's relationship with this accountant is a thing I think we've all been wondering about for a bit. In fact, heck, did y'all even know he was an accountant before this point, before this episode?
I didn't know that was his specific role, but he was clearly I thought he was just like a very advanced sort of secretary, like, the right hand. He knows everything. When Eli needs something, he's the one that'll do the reaching out. But no, I didn't know that was specifically his title.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Like you said, advanced secretary or concierge or what have you. Because you know, it was always weird that Eli seems to be like the only person in the family that keeps a great deal of distance between his personal life and the business, and yet he eats and yet his accountant eats dinner with the family. Is involved in all his personal matters. It seems whenever you see Eli, you see Eli's number two also. So you know it was a bit surprising to find out that his role was just accounting and like you said, not like a secretarial or like like he's his main administrative guy or anything. But that secret kind of cemented that, and I guess kind of made his role what it is, decades later.
Well, and it also
Well,
makes you question how much more Eli has kept secret in his career. Like you said, yeah, we know a lot of things about him, but he's very good at keeping secrets, keeping things hidden. To me, it was still sort of shocking, the revelation of how much money he's worth. What other business dealings does he have? Like Eli is a very calculating um businessman, and very, very good at what he does, which is one of the reasons he refuses to just, give his kids a lot of money to, even though he could, he feels that some of the investments are stupid and a waste of time. So that's why he hasn't invested in them. But, I'm curious to what else we don't know about Eli.
Speaking of which, I do have one theory, and I'm not 100% sure on it yet, but and because this could be the Aimee-Leigh secret too. Uh, but what was his name? Glendon, was it? The
yeah,
yeah, he
Junior's.
had before they killed him, he had $3 million on him.
Yeah.
Where'd that money go? $3 million
I was
cash.
wondering that because I kept waiting for them to show us that the money was in the car and that they just were like, well, we're keeping it. And because how did he pay for the stadium?
Right.
You're right. Where did that money go? What was, because his whole intent of showing up there was to force him to launder the money. So one would assume he had the money with him potentially. So yeah, that's a hell of a question, and the show did not answer it at all.
Yeah, and I feel like in that moment, maybe Eli took it as that was his sign from God right
Well,
there.
when they were burying him, they're like, "That's an evil man."
Hmm.
They were justifying the action that they were taking. They're like, "Oh, this was an evil guy. He came at you with a gun. He was threatening your fucking family. Hey, this is what, this is right."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So if they could justify that 100% and burying the man the way they did, they could probably justify in their minds keeping and laundering the money. Like, well, it's just going to sit here. You know, I could see that happening. And the fact that he's tied to this, his accountant is tied to this murder too. If he had any qualms about laundering that money for him, they're all going now. It's like, well, we're tied to this murder also. I'm a part of this, whether I like it or not. So I'm going to go ahead and help him launder that money.
Well, and Martin, it's not even, Eli doesn't have a lot of actual friends too, and it, when you look at individuals and how in this and I don't want, and this isn't a slight on any generation.
This is where we
It,
get canceled.
Yeah, it is.
no, I'm saying generationally speaking, when you look at people on social media platforms where they have thousands and thousands of friends, but how many people can say in a real life situation how many people they can rely on? Those are actual friends. People who, when situation gets tough, people who they can turn to. And when you look at people who have thousands and thousands of friends on social media, whether it be TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, but those aren't really friends. And you look at Eli, does not have a lot of friends. He has a lot of people who he socializes with, when he's talking to the senator, or when he's, at BJ's party and he's talking to these people. They are acquaintances and socialites, but
He
his friend is Martin.
he's
Martin is
he's
friend.
written sort of like Michael Corleone
Mhm.
in that way, The Godfather, sort of in that he's very separated, even from, yes, he's there with his family, but there's a wall there because he's always cautious.
Yeah, he is very much like what I imagine Michael Corleone to be, because
If you'd
I've
ever watched,
never been able to finish a Godfather movie. No one will let me.
come on, man.
I've tried. You've tried to help me watch these movies. Something always happens. But I think that is a good analogy, because he is the kingpin. He controls the money. He controls everything that happens with the business. He has final say. I mean, his kids can spitball ideas off of him, but he, at the end of the day, as we saw with the whole scenario with the listens, he makes the final call. And like Spencer said, Martin seems to be the only one that he'll take his opinion into consideration, because Martin, not only seems to share this dark secret with him, much like you were saying earlier, he seems like an actual friend.
Yeah, especially after losing Aimee-Leigh, like that was, yeah, and that was an interesting scene too. Their little fight in the bedroom,
Right.
where he was sort of like, she was sort of not on board with his plan, and what he called her princess or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically saying she had come from money where he didn't, and so there was some odd resentment there that we didn't know about previously.
And you get the same kind of resentment, the opposite end of that, with Baby Billy talking about how he's new money.
Oh yeah, Baby Billy, man, God. When he started hitting I would have punched the shit out of him. I understand him throwing his little fit when she called him out about leaving his family, but when he started slapping all the ornaments off the tree, no.
As somebody who loves Christmas, um, I fortunately don't have any family or extended family that would have enough gall to touch any of my trees. But I swear to God, if one of those motherfuckers would knock some shit off of one of my trees and then stand there and stare at me like that,
you could not be in my family.
No, because John Goodman's it's funny that they cast around John Goodman to make him look bigger than he is, because he's a one of those, everybody knows that one old man in their family was a farmer, and his hands are gigantic, and he's got those giant meaty, because he's worked with his hands his whole life. He's just a big guy. John Goodman's a bigger guy, but I'm a big guy. And I swear to God, if somebody fucking knocks it off my trees, I would put a hurting on.
Oh, he's not lying.
I got two brothers that would do that. Like I said, you couldn't be in my family, because God, they would try you.
We get that final shot of Junior sitting there holding the gun and looking at the pictures and thinking about things, and like you said, he clearly knows there's something, and what happens next. I still am of the belief that it wasn't him that hired the assassins. I still think that's the listens, but Junior still, I believe, is coming for Eli. I believe we have more than one sort of threat, if you will. That's my theory. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think those motorcycle gunmen were hired by the listens. We didn't get any of that in this episode because it was all focusing on the Junior situation. But go ahead.
And to me, there's so many things that are, you look at so many people coming after the gemstones, and we have the comical wrestler who throws a tomato at Eli's windshield. And
I just thought of something real quick. What about, here's another potential threat. The man that was at the very beginning of the first episode that was thrown out of the organization because of the dirt that was dug up on him. Like, could even he have some involvement in anything as a threat? He jumped out the window and broke his legs, but survived.
he jumped off the balcony of the
That was great.
That's a possibility, because
there's a lot of, like, Eli has built a whole lot of enemies.
But
yeah,
I look at the different, and antagonists that are coming after. Well, and they're not even really antagonists, because the gemstones themselves are some crooked motherfuckers. But when you look at the the antagonists that are coming after their family, you have the Listens that are very crooked. They're also the ones that, and we've talked about it too, that we think that they killed their own father and kind of hushed their own family to be able to come into the money that they have themselves. But then on top of that, you do have Junior and his ties to criminal organizations. But then you have Baby Billy, who has so much to lose, but also so much to gain by the gemstones downfall. So it is a very well crafted story, that not even just red herrings, that so many people have to gain by Eli's fall, that it is very hard to pinpoint who it is that's doing what.
it's written like you would write. It's funny because it's a mega church and it's all that, but it's written like you would write The Sopranos. Like, you know what I mean? I brought The Godfather up earlier, but sort of a criminal organization that has all these enemies that they have to watch out for and try and survive. And it's very much sort of written that way.
There's so many layers.
What's another good mob thing that we can reference that
Larry hasn't seen The Wire. Yeah.
And those are the only two, because
The
this is one of my favorite genres. So I've seen everything else you could possibly reference, except the two big ones that everybody references.
Nothing's better than The Wire. I'm sorry. It's the greatest show ever. It's so good. It really is.
Have you watched Oz yet, Larry?
I've watched some Oz. It's pretty good.
I've seen some of it back in the day.
Oh, dude, it's so fucked up.
I mean, yes.
So good, man.
Yes, it is. It's a hell. Like,
yeah,
it's hell. But
no happy. No, God, it's rough.
But The Wire. I mean, I don't know. We've done this many times on the channel. How our praises for The Wire.
Like, yeah, if you haven't figured out that two of us really, really want you to watch The Wire by now, you haven't been paying attention.
But it's a good measuring stick. It's like you have that bar, and it's like, well, But yeah, go ahead, finish your thoughts. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. I just feel like, if I'm on life support, or there's something, you're gonna be sneaking into my room, putting on episodes of The Wire.
Yes.
We're going to duct tape your eyes open while we have some projector. And I mean, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, when you're on life support, and
I remember,
don't know what,
because we didn't watch it as it aired. I remember me and Spencer. Who started it first? You or me? I can't remember.
I did. It was one of those.
And then I jumped on.
Yeah, and I was
because
like, you have to.
And when we started, it was one of those where we started watching it. And like I said, everything we talk about on this channel, as far as what we love and as far as writing, like The Wire was just like, it was all of that. It's like, oh my God, how is this written so well? And like, we were just like in awe of that show. We burned, holy shit, we watched it.
Yeah.
It was very short amount of time.
Game of Thrones started when we watched it, because we had access to HBO.
Yes.
And we kept talking about, you were talking about The Shield, and
yes,
and you were talking about how The Wire was so closely ranked with The Shield as far as some of the best endings ever. And I was like, well, I'll watch it. And then I watched the first probably like 5 or 6 episodes, and I was like, dude. And then you powered past me.
Well, because originally I was one of those where I thought it would be something I would watch, and I'd be like, and I would just like whatever. Like I wasn't sold on it still. And then I started watching it, and then it was like I can't not watch every single episode, and I just burned through it obsessively.
I kind of did the same
and I
thing.
wasn't spoiled, and that was the beauty. Like I didn't know what was going to happen because a shit ton of characters die, and somehow magically I'd never been spoiled to what happened in The Wire. Like there's a lot of great shows out there that I know what happens, that I didn't see, but that was one that I didn't.
Well, like when Dumbledore dies.
I've seen all that.
Sorry.
I'm still not spoiled on The Wire, believe it or not.
Good.
Well,
legit surprises.
The only thing I only know like one character's name, Omar, because the guy who played Omar played what's his name from, I'm trying to remember the name of the other thing.
Lovecraft Country.
Lovecraft.
Yeah, he passed away.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Great actor. He was also in Boardwalk Empire. Another great show.
Yes.
It's like I need to power through that since we have I was going to say at the moment, but I've always got HBO now. But yeah, I need to go finish Boardwalk Empire. But yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, it's good. The Wire is better, but in my opinion, but it's good. Yeah.
It's like, but yeah, I kind of did the same thing with this show because as you all know, as you two know, I watched all of the Righteous Gemstones up to this point, like right before the season aired that weekend.
That was cool. Through it. But yeah, you marathoned it right up to the point. Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, I'll watch a couple episodes because I kind of want to get a feel for the show first, and then wound up watching the entire series. But yeah, that said, my theory here is, as far as what's happening, because like you said, there's so many different forces working against the Gemstones at this point. So I feel that Junior's going to found a church. Like you said, I agree with your theory about the listens. They seem like the most likely to me to have sent those gunmen. It's like, but I think the question is here, and like you mentioned, guy from episode 1 of this season, he may play into this because how else is Junior gonna know the game inside and out? Because he plans on running, he plans on, like you said, he's just gonna maintain kayfabe and keep up the act. And how else will he learn the act? Heck, he might get that guy's money to help fund it, for one, and also there's the fact that, he talks about the last few things his father's talked about was that he felt responsible for Eli and everything, and that he was so proud of him and his business. And we know that he came there to launder that money in the first place. What are the odds that he didn't tell Junior that?
And I think that the gentleman at the beginning that was running one of the other churches, I think that he may be involved with Junior, but I think he may more so he may be involved with the listens. I think that looking for another monetary influx, because although Junior may be able to provide that influx of money, I think that the way that gentleman was thinking is more so along the lines of the mega church kind of income. And I think that the listens may be able to provide that. Although we do, and we were somewhat in agreement of the listens being a con. I think that the listens, he may be giving them information with the thought of maybe he is one of the sole people as far as maybe operating his church at the Zion resort. So the listens may have, provided him being like, hey, we're going to let you be the only church on our, property. But we need some information. and they may be, going about it that way as well. So I think that he may be also working with the listens, but providing information to Junior also makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah, and what are the odds that that Junior and the listens, if they're not done with this season, if they just solve whatever the minor threat is, that those two don't team up?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as you were saying it too.
Because that's a good possibility, and
Yeah.
especially if he's still running his father's criminal empire, then chances are he would launder his money through the listens, and the listens would be richer and more powerful than ever, and a much bigger threat to the gemstones. And now, not only are they not getting this deal, but they're cut out of all these things, that are connected to the listens, and the listens are making all these power plays and trying to destroy the gemstones now.
Yeah, we are getting a third season. That is confirmed. So I would assume there's a plot line already mapped out for that. And if you bring in Eric Andre, come on, you got to keep him around.
Yeah, and that to me is the big question mark, whether or not Baby Billy's going to be the big antagonist come season 3, and maybe the listens / Junior one kind of ties up this season, and maybe that opens the door for Baby Billy, or the opposite, where Baby Billy being the partial antagonist throughout this series, if they don't just wrap that up, and they wrap up that storyline, and maybe by the end of, and one of the comments talked about maybe the big reveal would be Harmon at the end of this season, and then us figuring out what role he has to play, and maybe that rolls into season 3. To me, there's what, 4 episodes left, because that was episode 5. There's 8, so 3. Yeah, 6, 7, and 8 are still left, and
6, 7, 8. Is there 9 or 8? I thought there
there's
were 9.
8.
Is there 8?
I think so.
Or 9. Let me double check.
I'm on it. I'm already up there. That's how I showed you.
Oh, okay.
Young Jesse. Oh, great. No, there is 9, so there's 4 left.
4 left.
He's got to be like Danny McBride's nephew or something.
Danny McBride.
He's in that kid. You want to play Jesse?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was perfect. he was nailing it. But yeah, solid episode. Like you said, there's 4 left. Very excited for those. Any other thoughts before we end this?
He's in. Yeah, well, that dude. Danny McBride must know him because he's in Halloween Kills too.
Oh, okay, yeah, because McBride he writes those, produces them.
Yep.
1 left. Hopefully, it's better than the last one. But yeah, anything else?
I do not have anything else.
No, that's it.
Enough random tangent that I don't.
The Wire, man. Always room for The Wire. I'm not cutting it. Leaving it in. So yeah, appreciate everyone listening. Look out for our review of 1883 and Raised by Wolves coming up this weekend. So very excited to be covering that. Appreciate everyone listening, and we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.